Okay.
My name is Carlos Walker, and this is Forward Progress. So today I have Mr. McCullough, who is one of my mentors, I like to say. So,
Wow.
yeah, look, so Mr. McCullough, if you will, tell the people who you are, what you do, and then what we're going to do, we're going to get into Forward Progress.
Okay. Hello out there, everyone. Uh, I'm Wally McCullough. I am a ex-felon. I've been home going on 3 years, close to 3 years now. And right now I flew planes out of Dulles Airport.
If you will, tell them how much time you have done. Then we're going to move forward.
I did 22 years on a 15 to life sentence.
Okay, so before you went to prison, if you will, because what we do here at Forward Progress, we talk about before prison, during prison, but then what we do, what we are doing now out of prison, because that's where everything, the Forward Progress come in, is sharing with everybody what we do as individuals who have been formerly incarcerated, but who have come home and changed our lives. So prior to you going to prison, tell me who that person was and just share a little bit about your backstory.
Well, prior to prison, well, I'm actually was born in Los Angeles. However, I also consider myself a DC native because I went back and forth my entire life and went to school in both places. My grandfather was the bishop of a large church organization, so in a way, I was a PK, and I gravitated toward the streets. I got into the streets while in Los Angeles. I got involved in gangs, and even when I wasn't in Los Angeles, in DC, it wasn't a gang thing, but I still got involved in the street life. I've sold and used drugs. I've done a number of things I'm not proud of. And when I got incarcerated for that long stint, the longest stint I did, finally got to recognize me. I got incarcerated for voluntary manslaughter while armed. Certainly not that person. I don't think nobody is the same person they was yesterday, let alone, let alone, as some years passed by. Unfortunately, it took me having to sit down that long to really get to focus on me. You know,
Okay, so before
and
prison, you was into the drug life. Was it any reason why you may have been there, or any particulars to this why you was there?
well, everybody got their own story. I can't say that I got involved with the drugs because of financial necessity or anything like that. However, I got. eh, I think it's a story that it progresses. You know, when I look back, I was always chasing the good time. I was always chasing whatever I perceived to be fun. And like I said, being raised by a preacher, I was in a very strict household.
Mm,
So when I got the opportunity to run wild a little bit, I overdid it. I ran too wild.
you took off.
I took off. I took off. And then chasing fun, you start off with the for me it would start off with the marijuana thing, but eventually that progresses into other things. And the way when you're in the street, you start being around more and more nefarious people. You can start being around more and more nefarious activity.
And then nefarious activity become you at some point, huh?
Becomes the part that nefarious activity you start living in. That becomes your norm.
So,
That becomes everybody. Everybody has a routine. And if that is your routine of getting up, getting out into the street and find out what's going on out there, and you get involved with the nefarious activity, that becomes your norm.
mm. So, why you, if you don't mind me asking, tell you said you went to prison for manslaughter.
Yes,
Okay, and they gave you what you say again?
I
Life,
was
15 to life.
sentenced 15 to life.
Which was it in DC?
It was D.C. Superior Court, D.C.
Okay, because I know DC, especially back then, they were giving out a
No,
two-part sentence.
yes.
Yes, so technically, according to, I guess you could say, their sentencing guidelines, they give you a lower end, and then the life being the higher
Yeah,
end.
well, back in the day when I got sentenced, DC they would give you two numbers or a number in life.
Yes,
Your back number would be three times as much as what your front number was. For instance, if you got sentenced to a year, it would be 1 to 3. Two to six, 3 to 9, 4 to 12, that type of thing.
and
So
then you go for parole, correct?
also, and then you are eligible for parole. I made parole after on my fourth time going to see him.
Okay, so now to get into, I'm not gonna get into the particulars of how the manslaughter happened, but while you were in court, this is before or going through your sentencing. How did you feel? Because I love to deal with the emotional standpoint. Because being young, we find ourselves doing stuff, and then when we find ourselves in the hot seat, it's more like, oh man, why I do this? Or we're looking back at the things. I think it was somebody that said 5 seconds can get you into 20 years of your life being served in prison or something to that nature.
Yeah, it doesn't take but a split second.
And this is what I'm asking you is what did you feel emotionally if you can remember or recall?
By the time I got sentenced, I was really beating myself up.
Mm,
I was really beating my. I don't believe nobody can kick your ass worse than you can.
come on.
You know what I'm saying? And I was beating myself up. I found it very hard to forgive myself. It was, and I think the only way I was able to forgive myself as much as I have been able to is through the grace of God.
Mm,
I started walking more spiritually.
okay. So you were in there and just got your sentence in prison. What was your mind state at? Because you got 15 to life. I don't know if in your mind you was coming out at the 15 mark or whether the life part was where your mind was at. But first
Well,
getting locked up, where
by
was you at?
by the time I had gotten sentenced, I had already been incarcerated for more than a year,
Okay.
right? And I started, like I said, to regret what I felt, in taking a life, what I felt. I started working on me, and I had made up in my mind that, if it wasn't something positive, I wasn't going to be involved.
Okay. So I know when you came in, Lawton was, I'm assuming, still
Yeah,
open.
Lord was still open. Yeah.
Tell me about Lawton because this is where you went, correct?
Yes, that's where initially when I got sentenced. I got sentenced and sent down to Lawton initially. Matter of fact, I left Lawton, and my crime happened in '99. I got sentenced in 2000,
Okay.
and Lawton had to be closed by the end of December of 2021 of 2001. I mean,
So
and
you was there for like a year?
I was there. I went in there for a whole year. I got sent down to Lawton in 2000. Yeah, I was there a little more than a year. And for that time, that wasn't my first time down, Lord, and unfortunately, this sentence was my third time doing time.
So tell me, so how much time did you do prior to that?
The first time I did time as an adult, I was in the state of California, and I did a little more than 2.5 years on a 5-year sentence.
Okay. And then you got is that was the longest stint you had done up until then?
Up until that point,
And
yes.
then you got this time.
And
So
then no, and then that was the first time I did time. Then
okay.
I came back cross country in DC, and in the early '90s I got sentenced to 5 years, 5 to 15, and I got sent down Lord.
Mhm.
You know, and
How
when
long did you do off that 5?
well, I went in and out off. I came out on parole and went back in on parole violation, and then came back. And I was on parole for that when I caught the charge that I got.
Okay. So you get this time you're in Lorden. Tell me a little bit about Lorden because they said Lorden was it was a little rough there.
Well, yeah, Lord had his own culture. Being that I've done time for the state of California, I've done time down Lorton, and after Lorton shut down, they sent all of us to the feds, whatever. I've been in the feds. Lorton had his own culture, and I think primarily that was because the vast majority of Lorton was dorms,
Mm,
and you're in dorms with people might have a long sentence like mine or longer, and you might have people in there that's got 9 months, or if they're doing a parole violation, yes, less than a year. And then you combine that with a lot of the COs and stuff that was down Lorton, you might have known from the streets.
okay.
As a matter of fact, it was a CO that I was in high school with. That me and him used to run around with when I was in high school, and he happened to never get in trouble with the law, and he wound up being a CO. But we were still friends, and being that way, you could get almost anything down Lorton. All the narcotics was down there. So when you have that and people trying to support their habits, of course, it could get rough and rugged.
So for all y'all who don't know what Lorden is it was a facility that held DC inmates, but it was in Lorden,
Well,
Virginia.
yeah, it's in Lorton, Virginia. Actually, it wound up, it was 7 facilities down there altogether. But, we all called it Lorton. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it was.
So
As a matter of fact, I left Lorton when they put me on the bus to the feds was 9/11.
mm,
I was on the bus on the way to Allenwood USP when the news came about the planes crashing.
so you're in the feds now. Tell me about your stay in the federal penitentiary. Well, did you go to the penitentiary first?
Yes, for the first place they took me to was USP Allenwood in
Okay, how long did you
Pennsylvania.
stay in the penitentiary?
I was in Hollywood for 13 years.
Okay, so you're in the federal penitentiary. Share a little bit about that story, or some of what you went through, what you may have seen, because some of these people don't understand what a federal penitentiary is.
I mean, it's all some of everything. Now the biggest difference between Lorton and the feds, or even California State and everything, down Lorton at that time, it was mostly blacks.
Mm,
You had a few Hispanics, a sprinkle of Caucasians, but it was mostly blacks. Whereas in the feds, you have people from everywhere. You have all kind of races, people from everywhere. And the state of California, same thing. You know, um, and you saw all kinds of different things. Saw different kind of gang activities. Of course, like I said, being from Los Angeles, South Central, I was familiar with you know that kind of gang activity. But then you see other things. And like I said, by the time I got to USP Islandwood, I had already been in for 2 years, and I was already focused on working on myself. Because I started looking at stuff like I said, that wasn't my first time doing time, but how did I keep winding up in these situations, and how did I wind up taking a life I truly didn't intend to take? You
so
know, so
do you? Oh, great.
when I started looking at those kind of things, I started asking myself questions, and I was more focused on me and what I could do to be productive. I realized that this is my third time doing time. It was my sixth felony conviction. The other couple of times I got probation, I didn't wind up doing time. And I had to just like, something got to be wrong with me if I keep winding up in these situations. So I started really working on me. And that's what I put the focus on. If I wasn't going to be doing something positive, I wasn't going to be involved. And I spent most of my time at USP Islandwood. Well, the first 6 years there, I worked in food service, and I already liked to cook, but that just gave me the experience of cooking for a vast population cooking in large quantities,
Mm-hmm.
but and you couldn't see it at that time, but a lot of the stuff that I was going through was prepping me for later, but that's how God works, and I got involved with the psych services in the feds. I became a inmate suicide watch companion, and then I
Okay.
became an inmate mental health companion. You know,
Share,
I just try to focus on looking at bettering myself and being able to come home.
share a little bit with me for the viewers. What is a mental health companion does?
Okay, well, there's two different jackets at war. Like inmate suicide watch companion
Mm-hmm.
is a person that it's an inmate that they trust enough to go watch a fellow inmate who has been placed on suicide watch for whatever reasons the psychologist or psychiatrist deem reasonable. Either the inmate has attempted suicide or maybe not taking the psych meds they need to be taking or something like that. So they put them on that watch so that they can have somebody watching them 24 hours a day. Although we know that we worked in 4-hour shifts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and that way you might build up a rapport with the person. You may be able to talk to the person. You may find yourself being able to help. And it's from that stems where psych services decide to expand the program and begin get inmate mental health companions, where at that point you be assigned one particular person that's on the compound, and you become a go-to that they could talk to about whatever. If they are to take psych meds and stuff, you give them reminders and ask them, make sure how you doing. And every week, and that person has to give consent to have this mental health companion, because every week you and that person will make reports to the psychologist, and just it was a way to try to be helpful.
So it's safe to say that uh, the institution utilized the inmates. I hate to even call us inmates because even though that's what we were, the inmates to actually be a part of the system of helping one another.
Yeah, yeah,
Supposedly.
yeah. I mean, and that's a peer thing that I think that hell, it's been discovered even from start. I guess started with AA.
Mm,
What it's saying, because how does somebody that's in those situations just trust and believe somebody that never has been in those situations?
mm.
You know,
We said that.
how can you have a lot of people that has been to school. They've got all kind of degrees and letters and stuff between them, but behind their names, but they've never experienced their feelings, the emotions, there's different situations that you and I and others who have been in the streets for whatever reasons have to go through. They've never experienced uh, being the target of law enforcement.
Mm. So
So it's
it's
it's it's I mean, there's certain people that you're not gonna they might say something to you and you don't even pay no attention, and somebody else can come along and be saying the exact same thing, maybe using different terminology, and it makes a light bulb go off in your head.
it's safe to say that because of the experiences that we have been through, the youth will be more gravitating towards us than will be somebody who's a principal at the school or a teacher or somebody then.
I think for the most part, but then it also is incumbent upon us to be willing to pay attention to the youth.
Mm,
Because so many of us, like I'm 61,
mm,
I'm a little older than you. So many of us come in with where we're from, what we looked at and how we look at things and what we feel like it should be or what it used to be and what have you. But you're not even paying attention to the youth.
mm,
And the example I give with that is because it dawned on me while I was in, I happened to be up at USP Islandwood at the time, and sitting in a group because, of course, they have us go through all kind of different groups and therapy and training sessions and whatever. But I'm sitting in a group and I'm talking to a young man who I know I'm at least 20 years older than, and he was talking about his growing up in Tennessee. I can't remember exactly what city it was, but he's from Tennessee, and he made a comment about he left school when he was about 11 years old and started selling crack because he had to provide for him and his sister because his mother was an addict,
Mm.
you know. And when he said that, the light bulb went off in my head. I don't have that reality. When I was 11, I was able to be 11. I was worried about my 10 speed. I was getting me a new 10 speed. That was, the big thing for me. But I turned 11 in 1973.
Your
So
reality was different.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think the youth will be more willing to listen to us, but we have to be willing to listen to them and
Yeah.
understand where they're coming from. So,
So, uh, sitting in prison, I know I met you in Bennettsville, South Carolina.
right.
So you did 13 in the pen. Where did you go from there?
I went to Bennettsville and I did 7 in Bennettsville.
What was the differences between? Because I know you stayed pretty much educational. What did you?
I did education. While I was at Bennettsville, I did education, safety, and of course, the psych service thing, suicide watching. But I said I try to keep myself busy with something positive.
I'm pretty sure you got your GED or your diploma or GED out on the outside.
I got my GED when I was 18 years old.
Okay,
You know,
okay. So you already had a GED when you came in on this bid,
yes.
and by having that, it was more beneficial on having it before you got there. Correct?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think so. My story. I did a little bit of college. I I have a buddy that calls me a cool geek, but I've always liked to learn. And so that wasn't a thing. I reason why I got my GED when I was 18 because happened to be while I was 18. I was like I said, I'm from Los Angeles. I was doing time in a juvenile facility. Like the gang banging in South Central was just the way things was. You know, uh, and I turned 18 in that facility. Uh, Prior to me turning 18, about a week or 2 weeks before I turned 18, the PO that I had told me that I'll be eligible to take the GED when I turned 18, and if I could pass it, that he could get me out of there. So I turned 18 in May, took the GED in June, and then on July 1st, they let me out.
Mhm. So you had Bennettsville. Tell me some. Like I said, I know me and you met each other there. Uh, you took a bunch of courses. You continued to do Suicide Watch and the Mental Health Companion as well. Me, I also took the same courses. Learned a little bit about it. I've always liked psychology. It's just something strange. It's just something brilliant about learning people. But tell me something that you actually learned while you was at Bennettsville that is more proficient in where you are at now.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I won't say it started in Bennettsville, but Bennettsville was a continuation because it started for me um, when I was at USP Allenwood.
Okay.
You know, uh, uh, for a while, hell, back in the early '90s, like around '94, I had walked away from Christianity and
Mm.
I had embraced Islam. But in 2003, I walked away from Islam and I decided to study Christianity the way that I studied Islam. And when I did that, I started becoming more spiritual and more faithful, praying. And prayer is, you said, well, where I am today, prayer is the biggest part of it.
Mm.
Prayer is the biggest part of it. I had, like I said, by the time I got the time, I had six felony. That was my sixth felony conviction, my second violent felony conviction. I had a small, since 15 to life, I felt like I had a small window. And I prayed that I would be able to make it through that because, being inside, situations can occur that stop a person from ever coming home.
That is true.
You know,
Uh, I'm pretty sure you know people who didn't make it,
exactly.
whether it was from passing or whether it was from having to take actions in their own hands to either keep from harming, or some people just they can
You know,
become bullies.
and
It's the environment.
it's just it's yeah, it's a different thing for everybody. I recognize, it's an old Christian song that's about somebody prayed for me, had me on
Mm,
their mind, and I know my grandparents put in a whole lot of prayer. It's
mm.
a, it, you know it's a whole lot of prayer that went into it, and I finally started recognizing that, hey, prayer changes things. I would pray about something and look about, and a little something would change or happen to go my way, something I think would be impossible. And I built my faith. Now I'm not gonna sit up here and act like I'm no angel or have a halo or floating or nothing like that. But because I don't believe in pretending like that. That halo drop down around your neck and choke the hell out you. You know, but in all honesty, it's prayer. Prayer, I pray about something, but then I also learn to focus, on what I want to get accomplished. I didn't, like I said earlier, different things, different little jobs I did while I was in between Allenwood and Bennettsville. And fortunately, those are the only two places I saw. I know a lot of people that saw the country on the Fed's plan, but I ain't trying to travel like that. Um, but the jobs that I did, was prepping me for stuff along the way, because I mean, hell, I took a culinary arts class in Bennettsville, and you were my teacher for the serve safe. Before we could touch the food, we had to pass serve safe, and you taught that course. But different things came into play. Like I said, I had prayer, and I knew what I wanted to accomplish when I got home. I knew that anybody coming home, and it's a beautiful thing when you have a support system, a family, family members that love you and all that. That definitely makes it better. It is a beautiful support system thing. It's a blessing. Everybody doesn't have it, so I recognize that blessing. I had that, but when you come home, no matter how much the people love you, and no matter how much they're trying to help you, you have to recognize this. You enter into a situation where you're disrupting their routine.
Mm.
Is everybody has a routine. And for those of us that was inside, you already know if they giving you a celly, that celly's getting ready to change your routine because you got to make room for that celly. Hell, what we're inside, and for whatever reason, they don't call the move when we felt like they're supposed to call the move at scheduled time. It disrupts the routine. Everybody gets to feeling some type of way. So, I mean, that same principle applies. When you come home, the people
You
that
just put
love you,
about the
they're
routine.
gonna give, but you are disrupting their routine. And I came home to, I'm blessed to have an aunt and uncle that love me, and they let me into their place. And but I wasn't trying to be there for no long periods of time. I came home on an ankle monitor.
Mm-hmm.
I came home on the end of April, and I got the ankle monitor off July 2nd. From the moment I got the ankle monitor, matter of fact, while I had the ankle monitor on, I was going out doing interviews, but wasn't nobody giving me no job with the ankle monitor on. It didn't happen for me. But as soon as I got the ankle monitor off, I went out and I started looking for work.
So
So
this is, give me 1 second. So this is the forward progress that you're speaking about. You came home. You at your aunt and uncle's house, and on a monitor looking for jobs.
yes.
What you're about to, I think, utilize some of the skills that you learned sitting in prison
Well, I
out here.
mean,
But
see, prior to me, I was one of those guys. Even though I was in the street, I still kept a foot in the legal world. I would have a job. I knew how to go get a job. I knew how to interview. I knew how to dress. I knew all that prior to me going to prison. The biggest thing that happened in prison, I recognized that the using drugs thing wasn't for me. I can't. I'm a different person. I don't want, and I didn't like that person. See, you got everybody talks about loving themselves, but I think it's a key thing that you got to like yourself. You got to
Mm,
like the person that you are, you know. And I realized that when I was in the street doing the drugs, selling the drugs, all that, I was living contradictory to my own morals and principles,
mm,
you know. So I was at constant battle with myself. So now when I moved that out the way, then I can look at, okay, I need to start applying the skills that I have to try to get this job. But then also the key of it is when you're in prison, you got to start prepping yourself,
mm.
you know, because it's ludicrous to think that you're going to, and for all of those looking at this that's been in the Fed, it's ludicrous to think that you're going to be stealing some onions and peppers from the kitchen, or you're gonna be doing this and that and trying to get your hustle on and do this, that, and everything. But and you doing 10, 15, 20 years, and the day that they decide to let you out, now you're gonna already be ready to get up in the morning and go hit some public transportation and look for a job. You know, if you're not prepping yourself for that, you know, you're not. It's not gonna happen. You know, I heard somebody say when I was in Bennettsville, and it made a lot of sense. You know, you could do 1,000 push-ups a day, but does that get you paid? How do you make money doing that?
So you had prepped yourself, you're out. Talk to me about being home.
I mean, man, it was nothing like being home. You know, it amazes me, but I guess it applies to some people because I came home and it was so many different people from the psychology field to just normal everyday people asking me, is it hard to be home? Is it something? And to me, nah, because being home is cake and pie. To me, I mean, it's a piece of cake. You know, easy as pie. You know, to me, I felt nothing but elation
Mm.
being home.
That's
Nothing
because
but
you
elation.
you were prepared. You prepared yourself mentally, physically, biggest part spiritually before you hit here.
Exactly. I trust in God. I pray. You know, I go on interview. I pray and the first serious job I had was at a Chick-fil-A. See, that's the other thing. You got to be willing to. You have so many people that say, "I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this." Hell, while I was in the feds, I was making that at Bennettsville as a grade one in education. I wasn't making but $58 a month.
Mm. Talk to me.
You know, so I mean, me come home and make 15, $16 an hour, that's a big difference than what I was doing in Bennettsville. And
Big
I was
difference.
working my ass off there. So why not come home and apply that same principle?
That's the forward progress that we are talking about. You're at home. You're working at Chick-fil-A. I think you told me once before. Safe serve help you in with your.
Yes, that safe serve certificate that I got while I was in Bennettsville. Not only did it help me get the job, the manager took me from there and let me get a Merlin food dispenser license.
So
Yeah.
you went from there. What was your next job, or what was
Well,
your next thing?
while I was there, that Chick-fil-A was in a mall, and in that mall they also had a bowling alley called Lucky Strike. I happened to go down to Lucky Strike, and the manager saw me and asked me would I like a job in their kitchen, and I took a job in their kitchen. Eventually, I worked around to being the mechanic there, setting the pin setter machines, and I worked both those jobs, and then an opportunity came along, making a little bit more money, working in the kitchen as a cook for the restaurant Uno's in
Mm.
Alexandria. So I went there, and for about 2 months, I worked all three jobs. I cut Chick-fil-A to part time, and the other job to part time.
That's
And
forward progress.
I for a couple of months, but after a while, they got to be a little bit overbearing. I let the Chick-fil-A go. And then, another blessing from God. God blessed me with a woman coming to my life, and she showed up, and then she had her bat out. She was batting 100% Team Wally. I was like, hey, and now today I call that woman my wife. You know,
Got married and all.
I got married and all, and she's been by my side. I left Uno's. I did a ride share for a company called Alto for about a month or so, and then I started working out at Dulles Airport. I started off with one company out there doing baggage handling, and now I work for another company fueling the planes.
Now, I don't know about certain areas. I do know up here in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, because of the jobs and the things, they're all, would you agree that there is work that can be found?
Oh yeah, I actually feel like if a person doesn't have a job, at least in this area, it's because they really don't want one. Because I mean, you may not be able to get the job that you want, but you can get a job. You know, it may not be as available as it was when I came home in 2021, because
Mhm.
the COVID thing was still going on, trying to end, going on, but every place was hiring,
So
and
it might have been a little easier.
it might have been a little bit easier then. But like I said, I've left jobs, went to other jobs. Every time I found a better paying job, I'd move to it. So
And
it's
we talking about somebody who got 6 felonies, one of them being a
a
manslaughter,
body.
yeah, a manslaughter or murder or whatever you want to call it, uh, in the eyes of the law, and still getting work.
Yeah, yeah.
So the F's on your report card really, it ain't something that stopped you, and I already know what you gonna
Well,
credit
well,
this to.
well,
What,
like I
what would you?
said, you pray. I mean, look, to start working out at Dulles International Airport, I had to clear customs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they take fingerprints, all that. They had you do a custom background check and all that, right? And now, like I said, this is my second company, so I had to clear customs twice. I know that. I mean, granted, my crime was in 1999. I don't have a crime since then.
Mm.
So it's been well over 20 years since I was in police custody, arrested for anything. So I mean that I'm sure that plays a part, but that just goes to show that given enough time, everything changes.
So
Nothing stays the same. Something's going to get better or it's going to get worse, but time, and nothing stays the same.
So before we jump off here, what I do want you to do is, can you give any young person or anybody who may be still incarcerated something that they can take this information and know that they also can make it? Because one, the reason why I'm doing this, or the reason why I asked you to even be a part of this, is because of what I know about you, what the success you have become, because you're a success story according to uh
I
society.
I recognize that according to the statistics that they like to propagate all over America is
I
that
like to say they false, but
is is that for those of us, especially those of us black men that have been in the penal system, we're no good, never gonna be no good. It's always gonna be the same. It's a completely perpetuating cycle that just over and over and over again. But I actually believe if they promulgate the statistics that are really out there, you have the vast majority of us that is wind up doing 10 years or better.
come
The
on.
vast majority is coming home with a whole nother outlook on life, a whole nother perception. And of course, I'm always going to give credit to God. I believe what I believe. And hey, the Bible tells me that a renewing of mind. That's
Mm.
what it means. You got to change your mind. We can't continue to do the same thinking and think we're gonna get something different. So we got to change your minds. And I made up my mind while I was in that I was tired of that bullshit. I was tired of punishing myself. Because most of our pain. I will say this to anybody, young, older, anybody. One of the best books that I've ever read was by a guy named Kahil Gibran. It's a book called The Prophet. And it just talks about a number of different situations. The first time I read it, I was in the ninth grade. and I've read it maybe 4 or 5 times since then. Of course, as life goes on, you get more experience, and you go back and read it. It means more to you. You see. But there's a part in there where he says that most of our pain is self-chosen.
Self-inflicted.
That means we're the architect, we're the designer of our own plane. Nobody, just like nobody chose to be an addict. Nobody just woke up and said, I want to be an addict. Every one of us thought we could handle it. No matter what we saw, every one of us thought that it wasn't going to happen to me. And there was some that's worse than others. That's true. But nobody planned on being that. Nobody planned on being addicted to cigarettes. Nobody said, you know what, I want to pick up a cigarette and never want to put one down. Everybody thought they could handle it. So, I mean, sometimes you got to sit back and think about, I ain't the one that can handle it. But I know someone who can handle it. And all you got to do is communicate with him. That's all you got to do. It might not come the way you think it's supposed to come. It might not come the way you want it to come or wish it would come. But when you look up and it's all said and done, because you was faithful, it's going to be the best thing for you.
Talk to me now. So, with the advice you would tell them, trust in God, basically.
Hey, like, trust in God. I mean, and you got to be willing to do some work. You got to recognize, you got to look at you. Be 100%, 1,000% honest with you. If you can't be honest with nobody else, you got to be honest with you. But one thing for sure, two things for certain, God already knows. And be honest with you and talk with God. And then start, if you know that you got something that you want to achieve, then you start figuring out, how do I go about achieving? What steps do I need to take to achieve that? And let that be your focus. And for like I know, it's plenty of brothers inside that they'll get up every day and religiously work out. If you inside, I'm gonna tell you to religiously get up every day and religiously pick up something to read, find something that's going to expand your mind. Do that. Work your mind harder than you work your muscles.
It's the strongest muscle that you have.
Yeah, you know it.
So,
and pray. We're not gonna leave pray out of that. I'm gonna always tell you pray.
So this would be the information that you would share with anybody.
With any and everybody.
Pray, or basically trust God. 2, work your mind and change your direction by using
you're renewing the mind. You got to change your thinking and change your direction.
I want to thank you for joining us here on Forward Progress, and thank you for being who you are, man.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, man. It ain't nothing but love. Peace.
Love you, bro. Hey, stay on for a second, but love y'all, and this is Forward Progress.